Thank you very much. Let me thank the Lisbon Council for inviting me to share a few ideas with you, but also to learn from you. Every opportunity in this energy business I learned is an opportunity to learn, and indeed you have come out with a product now that I can use very effectively. As you said, if you don't measure it, you can't change it. Commissioner, pleasure to meet you for the first time. You and I indeed have a lot of work to do, and combining our convening power, the European Commission, that of the United Nations, and the World Bank and others, I think indeed we can make energy efficiency actions accelerate even more. I was asked to give a little bit of a global context and also to talk to you a little bit more how we can bring the political establishment to follow some of the good ideas we see in this new report. Let me put a footnote that it's always dangerous to have Yumkela and Harry Vaha together. When I think I have done enough, Harry tells me you've not done enough because the investments are not flowing as much as we want them to flow. Global context, 7 billion people now, 9 billion by 2050. A lot of that increase will be in developing countries. My continent will add another billion people by 2050. Africa will be about 2.5 billion people more. We see energy demand probably increasing by 40–50%. Most of that increase for energy will be in our regions, the developing world and the emerging economies. Also, by that period, we see maybe 2 to 3 billion people in the middle class moving into the middle class in Asia. When they move into the middle class, they want more of everything. They have to live like you guys in Europe. More cars, more refrigerators, more televisions, very good condominiums. I was recently in India with Secretary General Ban Ki-moon in the vibrant Gujarat conference. The Indians still need to build 2/3 of the buildings they need for housing and offices by 2050. They have to build more. Somebody said, Kande, that's about 3 Chicagos. They have to build 3 Chicagos. Because yes, they will get more wealthy and they need to live like you. So you look at it, if the rest of the world decides to consume energy and other products as much as you, Europeans or Americans, have done, do we have enough of those natural resources to feed that appetite? So the whole issue about energy efficiency and sustainable production and consumption is really very crucial. Because indeed, people will become wealthy. Indeed, we're going to have many more people living on this small planet, and they all demand some of the same things that you have already, that you and I take for granted today. More refrigerators. There's not enough raw materials. But let's focus just on the energy story as we go forward. Recognizing this challenge, we started building a coalition almost a decade ago to say, look, central to all of this will be energy. And this 2015 is a crucial year. In September 2015, we need to launch the new development agenda called the Post-2015 Development Agenda, replacing the Millennium Development Goals. In this same 2015, that will be in September at the General Assembly. In this same 2015 in Paris, we're supposed to have a climate deal that Commissioner and others are supposed to deliver for us, an ambitious, binding deal that will keep us below 2 degrees. 2 important landmark social compacts that we should all sign. And of course, as is typical, politicians might agree to it, but the question is, will they do what they promised? And this is why what the Lisbon Council has done about MRV, measuring, reporting, and verifying, is going to be crucial. So this kind of analysis will help us look at that. But let me come back. To achieve sustainable development within that post-2015 development agenda, energy is central. So part of what we started doing 10 years ago was to say, how do we convince the world that you can't achieve sustainable development without energy? Why did we have to do it? Of course, we developed the Millennium Development Goals. There was no mention of energy. It's as if you and I took it for granted, that hospitals can run, don't worry about energy. The schools will run too, don't worry about energy. And people can lift themselves out of poverty, don't worry about energy access. Not true. 3 years into the implementation of the Millennium Development Goals, we realized that the missing Millennium Development Goal was energy. Second, climate change. We were advocating and pushing for a climate change deal, but we didn't want to talk about energy, probably because you have to talk about energy efficiency in industry. It suddenly would affect competitiveness of nations. So, okay, leave that out for now. Let's talk about just the emissions. So, but now we realize that in 2015, we don't have that luxury. The bridge between these two agendas, climate change and sustainable development, is what we do about energy. Can we have an energy revolution? Can we have a third industrial revolution that in fact will be resting on a low carbon transition that helps poor countries elevate themselves out of poverty, create wealth and jobs, and at the same time, keep us below 2 degrees? Because we cannot say to the rest of the world, can you apply all of the sustainability standards? Can you now transition into the new technologies, but we in Europe and the United States, the rich countries, go business as usual? That will never happen. So that's the challenge we faced in the UN, and therefore we came up with a narrative, sustainable energy for all, that will combine these two agendas, make it fair and applicable to everybody, but to different degrees. So sustainable energy for all, the first slide, please. We came up with this narrative. Yeah, it's up. Yeah? One goal, by 2030, to ensure affordable, reliable, sustainable modern energy for all. One goal with 3 targets. Universal access to energy. Let us connect the 1/3 of mankind that has no access to electricity. About 1.3, 1.4 billion people never had electricity, and they happen to be the poorest of the poor. Can we provide them modern energy services so they can lift themselves out of poverty, so they can achieve those Millennium Development Goals? At the same time, can we double the annual rate of improvement of energy efficiency? As our colleagues did in the presentation now, 1.3% is great, but what if it was 2.5, 2.6% per year? And you've seen the benefits. A commissioner and our colleagues have described the benefits. But also we double the share of renewables. One narrative that applies to Brussels as would apply to Lagos, Nigeria. Of course, the weighting is different. For Brussels, it's not about energy access. Probably it's energy security. But of course, for Brussels, it is about energy efficiency and renewables. Because yes, it can be done here. But is it being done fast enough to keep us within 2 degrees? So one narrative, and fortunately, we achieved our first political goal. After several years of campaigning, and thanks to the EU Commission, President Rousseau and Commissioner Piebalgs were first to join the Secretary General in this crusade. Now we put energy central to the post-2015 development agenda. It's goal number 7. I'll be talking about that this evening in another forum. We were able to do what could not be done in 20 years. In the first Rio summit, they didn't want to talk about energy. In the second one in South Africa, they tried to put energy in. The EU was behind that campaign. They threw it out too. This time we got it in. So first political goal achieved. Now energy is central to that development agenda. But in the climate space, we know we are all not doing enough. Emissions are going up. We're buying all kinds of energy resources we need today, because the first challenge for many nations is energy security. The World Energy Council puts it properly. They say every nation faces an energy trilemma: energy security, energy equity, all the affordability issues and reliability, but also sustainability. How do you balance all 3? It's very difficult in politics, because a lot of the challenges we have is because of politics and, of course, the lobbying, the interest groups, and so on. But at least in the development space, we've established that as a goal. Let me focus the rest now on energy efficiency. Thanks to the European Commission, just to go back a little bit, and other partners, we put energy access issues now in the development agenda. We now start a new process, and that's what I'll be doing now with the new Commission and others. Can we take the energy efficiency target, doubling the annual rate of improvement of energy efficiency, and make it happen? If all the benefits you see in this new report on energy productivity is true, how come it's not happening? I mean, we've known that. I'm not an energy expert. When I started advocating for this, very naively, people told me energy efficiency is the lowest hanging fruit. And I jumped on it and I started preaching it. And so some experts said, Mr. Yumkela, it's the low hanging fruit, but nobody's picking it. How come it's not happening? If all these benefits are real, I mean, the European leaders know it, the business people know it, but it ain't happening. So how can I convince developing countries to do it when the rich countries cannot do it? Look at what Commissioner said. You wanted them to adopt a 30% target, but they adopted a 27%. Even 3% made a difference. And there's a story there. When we suggested 2.5% annual rate of improvement, some NGOs told me, Mr. Yumkela, you're too timid. Push for 6%. So I called some experts together and say, hey, that's true, we can change the world. They said the moment you announce it, they throw it in the garbage because it shows you know nothing about energy. Energy efficiency is complicated. It touches everything. And a 2% improvement is a lot of cash. Some people told me if you say 4% in Europe, it will be the biggest investment after, probably comparable to the Marshall Plan, even much more. Because you're talking about changing transmission systems. You're talking about building codes. They say 4% is out of this world. Suddenly 2.5% made a difference. And I'm very happy you quote our target in your report on page 31. So what we've tried to do in Sustainable Energy for All, first get the narrative right. See if the world can agree on a vision. And we've achieved that. It's now in the goals. Second point, how do we align the politics, the pricing, and the partnerships? How can we bring the businesses to the table with the politicians to do what we need to do to scale up and speed up the interventions we need to attract the investments in efficiency? That's what we want to do now, again, partnering with the EU. And Commissioner and his team, I was meeting his team this morning. You and in Sustainable Energy for All, let me all say, we don't want to reinvent the wheel. We want to see where's good analysis. Everything we do has to be backed by good analysis. What are the recommendations? We pick a few. How do we make them actionable? How do we bring the political establishment with the business guys to get real action? That's the challenge we're going to face now with energy efficiency as well. The benefits are recorded. How do I get the leadership to take action? How do I get the companies to say, okay, we trust them enough and we'll take a bet on the long term? Thirdly, where's the finance? That's the next step of actions we want to take. And so we've taken energy efficiency as a big mantra now for 2015 to take that forward. Of course, I mentioned the demand for energy here from 1990 to 2008, but 36%, but we're expecting 40% or more over time in demand for energy now as we go forward. Of course, the big users, residential, transport, industrial, you've seen the numbers. I've mentioned the demographics, the challenges we're going to face on but additional benefits. So we said, fine, you've shown the economic benefits. Can we also show the climate benefits? And you can see here what we've pulled out of other analysis done. Most of the greenhouse gas reductions we can achieve from these energy efficiency interventions, provided they're taken up at scale and speed. Because here it's not that there's not enough, it's not that you don't have action on energy efficiency, you just don't have it enough at the speed and scale we need. There are little actions, but not with the ambition you need. 1.3% is not enough. You need 2.5 and more to really get the impact on climate change. And we believe 50% of that mitigation can occur. Look at the potential savings and investment opportunities. It's huge. Energy savings up to 900 billion per year. But to achieve that, you've got to put some cash in to begin with. The jobs, some studies say you get 17 to 19 jobs for every €1 invested, compared to nine jobs in the case of renewables. That's a lot, but it is still not happening. And so there are challenges, there are barriers. Well, they've talked about the multiple benefits. I will not go over that. I think in the presentations, you've had the multiple benefits with efficiency. We again broke it down, looking at the recent World Energy Outlook 2012. Where are the efficiency gains? You can see that in power generation, we're not even beginning to do as much as we should do. The old model of centralized energy generation has to change. We need a new energy revolution that focuses a lot on distributive, decentralized energy. You reduce transmission losses too. But how do we achieve that going forward is going to be a big question. So we came up with a concept under Sustainable Energy for All on energy efficiency accelerators. There's a lot happening, but how do we accelerate? And so that's what we're going to focus on. We've aligned some companies, but we're trying to mobilize 100 leading companies in the world that have the technologies. Philips on lighting, Danfoss in district heating and cooling, Johnson Controls, Schneider Electric, these big corporations that do have the technologies. And as the presentation mentioned, the technologies are there. What is missing is the regulatory framework, but also the business models that can make interventions and investments profitable around the world. Aligning some of those corporations with what we do within the UN and the World Bank and the regional development banks to build capacity in countries, in municipalities, to make these investments and technology deployment happen at scale and speed. These are the sectors we've targeted. They're very obvious to you. The lower two, industry and the power sector. How do we push more energy efficiency in industry? And also the power sector, we're working on now developing those coalitions. In essence, it is about building coalitions of governments at the national and also municipality level, and then bringing to that table businesses that can say, look, if you do ABC, we take a second look to bring investments. This is not an aid model. The amount of cash we need to make things happen, you heard it, 350 billion per year, you can't get through aid money. Aid money can leverage capital, but you need a lot of it from the private sector. So this is why we emphasize the public-private partnership in all of this. Just running through quickly, what are we going to do specifically? We're looking at transport accelerator. We've now targeted some countries. Within those countries, cities, you see the long list there of some that we're working with. But in the cities, we want to leverage an infrastructure the European Union has already, the Covenant of Mayors. They have 600 mayors that have signed a covenant within the EU context about measures they want to take in their own cities. Some are going fast, some are not going fast. Where is it working? What are the investment opportunities there? And can we accelerate that? But can we help them also twin with others in the emerging economies and developing countries? So for transport, what would be the target? We asked them to establish a common vision to double energy efficiency of all new vehicles by 2030 and of all vehicles by 2050. Can we get them to agree on some of this? It's a long-term target, but at least if they have a common target, you can begin to help them how they move towards it. So transport is one. And again, we're working with the Global Fuel Efficient Fuel Economy Initiative and UNEP and others to build that coalition. The next one, of course, is the lighting accelerator. We have something that has been tested already, the Enlight program by UNEP. Philips and others are all in that program. Can we take that and again scale it up? And with each of these, we give you below the climate impacts, the amount of emissions you can reduce. But can we work with those cities to really move this forward? Somebody asked me, how come when you were dealing with access, you talked about countries for 5 years, now suddenly you've become the friend of mayors? It is because we realize some mayors are very powerful. And they may have to fight with their local councils, but they don't have to negotiate with another 192 countries. This is why sometimes it's difficult in climate change. You may want to do something, but you're watching the other guy, because then suddenly competitiveness comes. But some mayors, if they're really interested, we've seen them drive their councils towards a target. And so for these activities, we're zeroing in on the subnational. The Covenant of Mayors of the EU, the C40, and all Schwarzenegger's R20, looking at some governance, looking at some regions. Yeah? We've done lighting. We're looking at, again, appliances. You saw the data on refrigerator. So you see some of the companies now we're bringing together to help us work together. But again, show the business opportunities. The key message here is the opportunities. There is money to be made. There are jobs to be created. Mr. Mayor, Madam Mayor, do you want to achieve your targets? How do we work with you to get these companies to come in and help you achieve your own social and economic targets in your municipality? I have friends, businesses, I have the EU with their technical assistance to support. But maybe some twinning, mayor to mayor. Those who have done it right, teaching those who are struggling to do it. Because even at that level, it is political. Buildings, Johnson Controls, they have a roadmap from the association, their own association. We're identifying elements there. How do we make their own roadmap they've developed go forward? For industry, we're working with the World Business Council for Sustainable Development to move this forward. Let me conclude. Yeah? All of this is great, but to really give it a big political push, the deal I'm trying to make with Commissioner and his colleague and the new president of the EU to back me now on efficiency the same way President Barroso backed me on access is to say, well, let's go do a march on Paris. If all of this is true, We need political action. I want to take to Paris 2,000 mayors. You have them in the covenant. We inform them. We work with them now 8 months. Maybe out of the 2,000, we get 300 that are marching already, but maybe another 600 that really want to march, because it's the opportunity message. Here's how much you save on energy systems in your municipality, so you can put that in hospitals. But also, here are the companies that can work with you because they're ready to invest. The technology is not rocket science. It is there. But we don't have the capacity to do the public policy, to do the incentives. No problem. I have my friends in the EU to work with the mayor of Lagos. Lagos, Nigeria will go from 15 million inhabitants to 30 million. Yeah, in another 20 years, 20, 25 years. Addis Ababa, Cairo, mega cities in Africa, mega cities elsewhere. Look, even if you Europeans have 0 emissions, we still go to climate hell, because everybody else will increase their emissions. This is why you need that global cooperation. I learned it from a scientist. He said there's a room for everybody in climate hell. Carbon has no passport. Yeah? So this is why the UN becomes relevant. This is why sustainable energy becomes relevant. Can we share knowledge, share opportunity, so we all remain within below 2 degrees, but at the same time, we create jobs. And I say to Europeans, each time, some of you have heard me say this in Brussels over and over, and I repeat it. Why should Europe care if Africa is going to be 1 billion people? Of course you have to care. 1 billion people, 2 billion people next to you by 2050, no electricity, no jobs, no clean water. What will our kids do? They come and visit you. But you want them to come as paying tourists, right? I want my daughter to come here and pay cash in the Hilton. They need economic opportunity down south, but it's a good market for technology. So we need to spread that prosperity. This is not about charity now. This is enlightened self-interest. How do we create markets so these low-carbon technologies can be deployed globally? We save the planet, but we spread prosperity. So it's a story of opportunity, prosperity, and collaboration. Thank you very much.